Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another video and today's topic is This Generation and the Sign of Jonah. Today as I was reading through Luke chapter 11 with my children, I came upon a verse that I had forgotten about that uses the phrase this generation and really provides, in my opinion, a good context for how that phrase is used. If you think of it in light of all of the people who tried to give different definitions for this generation when it comes to Matthew 24:34, when Jesus said in the Olivet Discourse, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." Now, for those of us who understand what the word Genea means, it's pretty cut and dry what Jesus meant. But there are many people who do not want to apply the Olivet Discourse to the destruction of Jerusalem. They prefer to put it sometime in the future, so they tend to try to make excuses for the phrase this generation in Matthew 24:34, such as the excuse of saying that it means race or kind, or other people will say that it is referring to a future generation, which would actually be adding to Jesus's words because he did not say that. And I have used the example of Matthew 23:36 in other videos, and that is when Jesus said to the Pharisees, actually we'll start with verse 35. "And so upon you will come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I tell you, all these things will come upon this generation." So I have used this before for context to show people another example of this generation being used. And I think, again, it's pretty clear here that Jesus was talking to the Pharisees. I don't think anyone would argue with that. And then because he says to them, "So upon you will come all the righteous blood shed on earth." He's speaking to them. And then he says to them, "Truly I tell you, all these things will come upon this generation." Another cut and dry example in my opinion, but I found another example because there are still people who refuse to believe that that's what this generation means, as in referring to the contemporary generation of the speaker. So let's read Luke 11:29-32. "When the crowds were increasing, he began to say, 'This generation is an evil generation. It seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. For as Jonah became a sign to the people of Nineveh, so will the Son of Man be to this generation. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with the men of this generation and condemn them. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here. The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here." So as you can see, the phrase "this generation" is used, I think, 3 times in this passage. And I don't think that anyone could make an argument that this generation here is referring to a future generation. And I mean, people could still make an argument that it means race here, but even in this context, it would still be contemporary people. And so I don't think that even race would match up here. And in fact, if you would go and look at the Greek word used, it was Genea. And again, Genea refers to a contemporary generation. It actually means generation versus the word genos, which is used when it means race or kind. But what we see here is that Jesus is comparing the generation that he is speaking to, calling it an evil generation. And then he goes back to Jonah, when Jonah went and he preached to the Ninevites. And Jesus is telling the people that he is speaking to that to his generation, he is going to be like Jonah was to the Ninevites. So if you look at it this way, Jonah was there in person speaking to the people of Nineveh. So in this case, Jesus would obviously be referring to the people who were able to hear him speak in person. So again, his contemporaries. Then, interestingly, if we read verses 31 and 32, it says, "The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with the men of this generation and condemn them. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here." So Jesus is telling them, I am here with you right now. I am greater than Solomon. I am the sign of Jonah. I am like Jonah who was preaching to the Ninevites. Jonah was there preaching in person to the Ninevites. So clearly Jesus was referring to the people that he was talking to as this generation. And not just those who were there with him right that minute, but I think that he was referring to all of the people in his generation, because many of them would be hearing him speak. So even if we go to verse 29, it just starts out saying, "This generation is an evil generation. It seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah." If we go to Matthew 12, it kind of gives us context for that. Matthew 12, 38 to 48. "Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered him, saying, 'Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you.' But he answered them, 'An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah." So this is the same, this is talking about the same event, but just in different gospels, except Matthew, and you know what, to be quite honest, I'm going to go to Luke 11 right now. I just want to see if that also shared the same context as Matthew 12, because I'm having a brain blank right now. Okay, no, it didn't. I just went back and checked. It does not show it. I was thinking to myself, why would I have included Matthew 12? But anyway, getting distracted. My grandchildren are upstairs crying because, well, baby stuff. Anyway, this is what happens when you have a 5-week-old and a 1-year-old in the house at the same time. But anyway, so this gives us context. All right. So it is the scribes and the Pharisees who were saying to Jesus, "We wish to see a sign from you." And so when it says here, generation is an evil generation, it seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. So again, he is talking about the generation that is there with him at the time, who are alive with him at the time. And even in Mark 8:11, the Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. And then Jesus sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation demand a sign? Truly, I tell you, no sign will be given to this generation." So we have the same story again, coming from a different point of view, but it's still the same phrase, still being spoken about the same group of people. So I ask you, if we have all of these examples, and there are more, but if we have all of these examples of the phrase "this generation" referring to the contemporary generation of the speaker, why would Matthew 24:34 be the only one that's different and be referring to some future generation? And many futurists like to call it the fig tree generation. But did you know that the phrase fig tree generation is not even in the Bible? People get that term from the headings that they put in Bibles. Like even here, the lesson of the fig tree. That's where they get it from. They get it from church tradition. There's no phrase in the Bible that says the fig tree generation. That is just an invention of man. The way that people got that, other than from just hearing other people say it, so they say it too, is because Jesus had spoken about the fig tree and used it as a parable to help the people who were there with him, to help his disciples to understand how to be able to see the signs of what was coming, the signs that were around them. And the fig tree parable was used as an example of this. It was not talking about a future fig tree generation. As far as I know, that's a dispensationalist machination. So, and even here, if we go to 33, it says, "So also when you see all these things, you will know that he is near, right at the door." Well, who was Jesus talking to there? He was talking to the disciples, and he said, "When you see all these things." Okay? He didn't say, "When they see all these things," meaning people in the future. He said, "You." And he said, "Truly, I tell you." So all of this to say that we need to just honor the time texts and stop trying to force our own beliefs into the Bible. It should be the Bible that is shaping our beliefs, not the other way around. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below. And if you like my work and would like to become a channel member, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well, or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.